Hey Amarillo, I'm Jason Boyette, and you're listening to Hey Amarillo, the interview podcast featuring some of the most interesting people and stories of Amarillo, Texas. As part of this podcast partnership with Brick and Elm Magazine, I want to give a podcast shout out to Northwest Physicians Group, Ascension Academy, and Advanced Dentistry of Amarillo. The new September-October issue of Brick and Elm is on newsstands now. It's also at the brand new United Market Street at Coulter and the Loop. So when you go visit it, look for our magazine. Today's guest is Will Krause. Will is a promoter and festival producer who has been involved in a number of big concerts and projects from Austin to Amarillo. To start, he's the festival director for the Hoodoo Mural Festival, which returns to Amarillo on September 28th this year. And his connections within the music industry are a big reason Hoodoo has been able to get some really impressive names and emerging artists for the local stage here. Will was also a partner in the Euphoria Music Festival in Austin for several years, and he continues to work as a production manager for the South by Southwest Conference and festivals in Austin every March, and I know you've heard of that. As a promoter, he recently brought artists like Hayden Pedigo, Kristen Key, and Charlie Crockett to Amarillo for shows at the Globe News Center. Will grew up here in Amarillo. He lived elsewhere in the state for several years, and now he's back. He moved back, an intentional decision a few months ago. And so we talk about all that stuff and the larger story about local entertainment here in the Texas Panhandle. Here's Will Krause. Will Krause, welcome to the Hey Amarillo podcast. Thanks for being here.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Oh, I'm honored to have you. I know you're a listener of the show, and we've known each other for a couple of years, so I'm glad we finally get the chance to do this kind of thing. And I want to start with you the same way I start with all my guests, and that's just to ask you why you're here. So what brought you to Amarillo? What's your connection in the first place?
I'm born and raised in Amarillo. I went to college in Oklahoma. Then I kind of lived a few different places and ended up in Dallas and then Austin, where I've been for the past 12 years. And in that time, Austin has just kind of grown, and it's a wonderful place. But I had a niece and nephew, and my family's here, and it just kind of, I'm a bit older. So I was, and with the events that I've had going on here, I've always enjoyed this community. And it just kind of got to a point after COVID where it was like, hey, you can kind of like remote work is a thing. So I'm able to do that. And I wanted to be close to my family and the convenience and having a sense of home, so it was exciting to move back after being gone for so many years and kind of still working on stuff in the community.
When did you officially move back?
The end of May. So I've been here about three months.
Let's talk about leaving before we talk about coming back. Where'd you go to high school here?
I went to Tascosa High School.
After Tascosa, did you know what you wanted to do? Did you leave for college or what?
I thought that I did. I was really, I'd always liked music, but I wasn't that interested in college, or I kind of decided my senior year that I wanted to be a film editor and kind of go to film school, and went out with my parents to Full Sail in Orlando, and I got into that school.
A major creative academy. Yeah. It's a big time school.
Yeah, it was exciting, but it also was an 18-month program, and I was 18 years old. So when my parents and I got to talking, it was like, hey, this is going to be done in 18 months. You're going to be 19, and you're going to need to go get a job. And I was like, well, you're right. I kind of need to reassess this. And we have a family cabin that my grandparents built in Ada, Oklahoma, the Krause family. And my sister was going to college in there. So I ended up going to college there. I applied 2 weeks before college started. I hadn't taken my ACT and had to do it, and ended up going there. And it was a really cool school, Ada, Oklahoma, small town, but its claim to fame is Blake Shelton is from there. Okay. And at the time, his manager was kind of one of my professors. So looking back, I was able to kind of learn a lot at this university that most people wouldn't think you would.
Did you finish a degree there?
I did.
What was the degree
it took me 5 years. I double majored ad and PR in mass communications, and then minored in art history and ceramics.
All right. So I'm a a journalism and English major. And so I hear those and I'm like, well, those are the kinds of degrees that you could do almost anything, or you could do nothing and nobody cares.
Right?
Hey, ceramics, that's great.
Yeah.
So, like, what did you have a sense of what you wanted to do? Like, did ever that become clear before you got out of college, or did you start?
Yeah. In being young and kind of like the dawn of the internet and music blogs and Pitchfork Media, Napster, I always got into downloading music and burning CDs. So I always kind of was a music person. But
was that happening while you were in college? Like,
well,
Napster,
no, that was in high school.
That was high school. Okay.
Yeah, high school. And then college, I was always interested in music and computers, and DJing on a computer was starting to become a thing. So I kind of knew that I wanted to do something related to film or photography or the creative arts, but I wasn't sure what. I knew that I loved music, and I started managing a band. I met some people in Oklahoma and started managing a band called Montu, and through that was able to play at places like Granada and Kane's Ballroom, and they were opening up. So from there I was like, hey, this is like pretty enjoyable, and maybe I can take this band to Amarillo and throw a show and see how that goes. And that's kind of how I was interested in that. I don't think I, unfortunately, was a very career path oriented mind. I kind of wanted to just enjoy myself and have fun. So when that band started opening up for bands that I was like, hey, like, this is really cool. And then you see kind of behind the scenes and that bands really do work hard. It's not, all a show. So that's kind of where I got interested in the music side of stuff and throwing shows.
Tell me how that developed into like what you would consider a career, because there's a big difference between, managing a band, handling the administrative side, as opposed to what takes place on stage, and then getting to a place where you are a producer and a promoter and you're doing multiple bands or multiple events and that kind of thing. So how did that grow, and how did you sort of find your way around that expansion?
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, kind of like through Amarillo. They're from Oklahoma, so I was able to rent out the Nat for $300, no contracts, no liability, no anything. And you could fit about 1,500 people in there. So the first show I did, I had about 800 people. And back then, Facebook was primarily college students. And that was like our marketing, because physical marketing wasn't really, it was hard. So I owe a lot to the beginning of Facebook events.
Before everybody's great aunt was on Facebook.
Right. And people being excited and actually like using it as a hub for information, because it was mainly young people at that time. So once I kind of through my own show, and through that I had other people, and I learned that balancing other people on acts and how long bands take to set up. So once I did my first show at the Nat, and it went well. The building had a ton of history, and I really liked it. Even
that was before it was an antique hall, I suppose.
And it was,
you didn't have to clear out all the knickknacks and stuff.
It wasn't in great shape, but the history of it was just so cool for me as kind of starting to do shows, to be able to kind of come in this big place, because I also had to, once I rented it out, I was like, oh, I need a sound system. Well, it's not just a small. I had to like get a PA and a sound person. And then about that time, or in that same time period when I was in college, when I came home my freshman year, Christmas break, they're like, everyone wanted stuff to do, and there wasn't. So I was like, well, why don't I can have a Christmas party, because all my friends are in bands and I can feature local people that are in town, and it gives something for people to do. So the Christmas party, I learned a lot. At this point, I still, maybe even till this day, I'm not sure that it can be a business.
You're still making that work.
Yeah. That was really exciting. And I ended up doing probably 6 shows at the Nat. And my friend Zay, whose uncle owned Kane's Ballroom, and he booked the Sex Pistols when they came and did their controversial show. Just super history. He would do my posters, and it was, I thought it was so cool to like have artwork that you come up with and kind of put this idea of something fun together and then it work. So that's kind of what motivated me, and that band helped me meet other people.
Okay.
So that's kind of how the beginnings of it started.
Okay. At what point did you decide leaving Amarillo was the right choice?
I had been in Amarillo. I did college. I did some summers in Alaska after college. And then I think I was 25 and I had done a show at the Nat. We did a Halloween party, and my friend Tom Knapp came up to me backstage and was like, I have this friend and he's wanting to throw this festival in Austin. He's raising money. I told him about the band you manage and that you kind of, know some people. And he connected me with him, and that turned out to be Euphoria.
Okay.
So I call him and I talk to him, and I end up getting, my band on it and some other DJs and kind of help. And it was in Kyle, Texas.
What year was that?
It's 2012.
Okay.
And went down there and I met Mitch, and Tom was there and some Amarillo friends. And at this time, before this, my friend Briggs Mitchell, who's from Amarillo, is one of my best friends. We had started a company to manage that jam band. And so after I went to Euphoria, I talked with Briggs and said, hey, as a company, I do think this could potentially be something. And this is, ACL was super popular at the time, but electronic music was not as mainstream.
Okay.
So it wasn't as popular, but I knew that there was something there. So as a company, we invested the second year, and I kind of helped book some more and did what I could from the side. But that's when I decided to move to Dallas, because Briggs lived in Dallas and we could have a place there. And Euphoria also none of these were full-time jobs. Like these were passion projects that we were working on, and
pretty
investments.
Seasonal.
Yeah,
right?
Totally. And investments that we, hoped would pay off. The next year, it grew. We invested some more and then raised. And then I kind of took on more of a talent buying role for kind of the lower tier talent and arranging things. And our group, there was 3 of us, and we kind of formed the company that would go on to put on Euphoria and hire staff and do talent buying. So that, to answer your question, is when I moved to Dallas, which was probably 2013. I was working at Hill's Sports Shop, and I said, Kirk, I gotta go. So went to Dallas, worked at a sandwich shop for a while, and then moved to Austin.
And Euphoria is still a thing?
Euphoria is not.
Oh, is it not?
Hopefully one day. Our last one was in 2021.
Okay.
So we went from 2012 to 2018. We grew from 900 to 25,000 per day.
Wow.
At our final 2 years. And kind of the last year, we had another promoter, one of the largest promoters in the world, decided that a week after our festival was a great time to put on an electronic music festival just 1 hour away from ours. And so in the festival space, it's very hard as an attendee to purchase 2 tickets to an event. Even nowadays, like families, if you're going to go to a concert, you're typically going to go plan to do that one thing. So though we still grew, we lost some potential ticket buyers to this festival, and they were one and done. They happened one time. They came in. We knew who they were, and we had talked with them about maybe partnering, but we said, no, we're grassroots. We're independent promoters. We built this. We want to do it. And they said, great, well, we're just going to throw a bigger festival a week after yours. So that was really difficult. So coming off of like what we had grown, and we'd built this huge team and 25 attendees per day, 4-day camping festival, we had to, these people come out and live. So there's a lot of
big event
legal stuff. Like, the talent buying and is the fun part, but what you
got to provide bathrooms,
what you really dive
security
into is
and all that
how
stuff.
many people ingress and egress, what is unsafe, what is like what right of ways, if people were completely lost, how would they find their way back? So it was really amazing, and Euphoria is very near and dear. I'm very proud of what we did. Our last year, I booked Post Malone before Stoney came out for the most criminally cheap rate, and all of my friends on the team were like, "Why are you, Post Malone? Like, why?" And I'm like, "We're doing it. Like, we're gonna have this guy." And his album came out, and his agent called us back and was like, "We're gonna need more money," but we'd already signed, the contract, and it was a great performance, and it's real fun to look back and kind of have memories like that.
Yeah.
And
probably pre-tattoo Post Malone.
Oh
at
yeah,
that point,
totally,
right?
totally. And it was right after White Iverson, but Euphoria. Then with that year, we kind of said, "Hey, let's rebuild," and we threw a smaller event. And in that year, the city of Austin decided that they were going to deny permits, and so we ended up having to move the festival into a couple other venues outside of town, which was difficult, but it all worked out great. And then we started to plan another one, and then COVID happened. And that was a big reality check to me and my friend group, and basically everything. I got fired from South by, they fired the whole staff. Like it was very wild time.
Yeah. So you mentioned South by. Tell me how you got connected with that festival, which, Amarillo people may not have heard of Euphoria, but like everybody's heard of South by Southwest. So
totally.
Tell me about that part.
Totally. So with Euphoria and being in Austin, I had met some people, and then I had friends that work for South by. And in 2018, after we kind of had the festival that we had to change, I got a phone call from one of my friends saying that, the production department was hiring and that they had put in my name, and which was very exciting for me, because in college, my granddad, he grew up, or he lived in Austin. So when I would go visit him, he lived there. And then in college, he and I were roommates. We lived together, and he's like my best friend.
That's
and
fun.
Super smart and very well read. But he had a friend's daughter that worked at South by. So even in college, he'd say, "Willie, you need to go work at Southwest." And my first South by was 2004, and for me as a music person, it was incredible. Like I went to a taping, and that was when people sold you CDs, and a lot of the bands I found out in South by 2004, I still listened to. So it was really cool. So they asked me to apply, and I went in and was kind of hired. There's other people out there, but kind of hired on the spot. And I know that my granddad had passed away like 2 weeks before. So it was a super good thing. And I was hired to be a production coordinator, and that for comedy, and also do DJ equipment, our gaming awards show and film awards show. So my first year I replaced 2 people, and it was exciting for me, because as a promoter and someone that is, very interested in learning about things, even though I had my friend and I had a company, this was an opportunity to go in this place and see how they operate,
right,
and how they pull off the biggest tech, music, and film conference in the world. And 350,000 people come down. So I was so overjoyed, because to have an opportunity to work here, and then not only that, I really liked my job. And over the past 7 years, it's just become like my favorite really cool thing. I'm now the sole production manager for the comedy festival. Okay. So that entails, we do about 50 comedy shows, and our top tier talent is at Esther's Follies. So I advance all those shows, get on with their teams. What do you need? Are you showing anything? It's really exciting, and especially to kind of see this comedy wave that's been going on.
Yeah.
I've ended up kind of working with a lot of really, really wonderful people. And just this last year, I got to produce the show for Conan O'Brien and Robert Smigel and Judd Apatow and Frank Oz. And it was just like a pretty amazing thing, like being a Frank Oz, He was the voice of Yoda, Bowfinger,
Grover,
Groundhog Day. And so advancing all the stuff. So they're going to show clips. So part of my job is, hey, we're going to show these clips and we're going to give you cues. So I build keynotes and also advance it. And then Conan, this year, I had already set up everything. We had rehearsed, and then 10 minutes before the show, the house is packed. There's 500 people in the audience. He's like, hey, Will, I want to add 2 more videos. And my computer's plugged in, and I'm like, it's Conan O'Brien. I'm like, I've got to add these videos, but I really, it's just scary when you have projectors. And but was able to get the videos added, and they ended up kind of bringing me into the bit. And Robert Smigel is like my favorite comedy writer in the world. TV Funhouse.
Right.
He's the insurance guy in Happy Gilmore that gets thrown out. He's also Triumph the Insult Comic Dog. So he was doing that voice and kind of cracking some really fun jokes that I felt special to kind of share those moments with these people. And
tell me about a job like that, because knowing that South by is not something that takes place every week. It's a seasonal thing,
right?
But it's also a full-time job. So right now it's September. The next one is several
March.
Several months away. And so what are you doing now to prepare for March of 2025?
Yeah, so South by only keeps around about 20% of the staff 6 months of the year. So I am the other part of that. So my contract is 6 months out of.
So you're not pulling a paycheck.
Correct.
12 months out of the year.
Correct. Yeah, I'm relying on my other companies and businesses that I do. But a lot of it is permitting with the city, logistics, sponsorship. The bulk of things that I do is, like 2 years ago, Eric Andre premiered his season 6, and it was bonkers. It was totally such a fun experience, but because he was premiering an episode of unreleased footage, that had to go through me. And what has to happen is, this was with Warner Brothers. They forensically put an invisible image to our human eye in the video that's cloned on my hard drive, and only I can play this video. And if anyone in the audience puts it on Instagram or Facebook, they're able to analyze that and put it directly on me. So a lot of interesting stuff like that. And that takes a while. And we did, 2 years ago, we did one of the coolest things was John Cleese, a conversation with John Cleese. And it was right after his wife has died and his daughter did it. But when I was miking him up, and I'm so excited to meet this guy. I've been emailing him, and he's not late, but I'm not comfortable. He's running a bit late. I'm backstage. I've got his mic ready to go, and he turns the corner. It's 2 minutes before he goes on, and I'm putting on his mic, and he just falls straight forward. I guess he was tired, or I think he was trying to do like a bit, but he continued. So I've got John Cleese on the ground 1 minute before he's about to go on stage, and we got him up, and it was just like, wow, like this is a pretty
you can't plan for things like that.
Wild thing. But and then outside of that, a lot of work is ordering and working with vendors and negotiating prices and contracts and trades.
It's not the sexy side of what you see on stage. It's all the background to make that go off without a hitch.
Totally. And it is a huge team. It's 300 people when we're in our max. And then the amount of feet on the ground during the festival is 3,500. And that's including volunteers and line management. Yeah, it's crazy to see from the inside, because Roland, the guy that started it in 1985, he had went to New York to go to a kind of a music conference, and he had trouble parking, and that was like his biggest gripe. And he was working for the Chronicle, and he went back to Austin, and he was like, why don't we have a lot of venues here, and I don't care where people park their vans. Yeah. So that's kind of
Texas has a lot of parking.
Yeah, I've thought that was really cool, and that's not the case now. You definitely can't park in Austin. Sorry, Roland. But I think I've thought that's really cool, kind of the roots of it, and then what it has become, because through that, one part of my job is I get to do the talent that plays on our keynote live streams. So we have our top tier talent, we'll have one a day, and they will give a keynote that's live streamed. For example, last year, the big ones were like the Black Keys, and then the Daniels from Everything Everywhere All at Once, and then Lisa Su, the CEO of AMD. But we have 9 minutes, so we always have an artist and they perform before them, but we have 9 minutes and it's live. So part of my job is advancing and getting these people on stage, and that's how I met Pedal Steel Noah, because he opened up for the Black Keys and then found out that his dad was from Amarillo. But that is that's a super fun part of the job as well, because it's kind of nerve-wracking, and you set it up as best you can, and then without fail, these European acts have a 220 volt and the transformer doesn't work, and it's exciting, and it keeps me on my toes.
So you mentioned Pedal Steel Noah, who's going to be performing at this year's Hoodoo Festival. I want to bring it back to Amarillo because, and you said you have moved back here, but because you maintained family and ties here, we've been able to benefit from your experience and your expertise with festivals, because you were part of making Hoodoo a reality and bringing in a lot of the bands for that. You've brought individual artists like Hayden Pedigo or Charlie Crockett to play at the Globe News Center. So you're continuing to use those connections and that experience to create concert experiences and festivals here. And so I want you to talk about that a little bit. Tell me, let's talk about the individual artists to start. That one of the things you really like to do is to create concert experiences in Amarillo that really nobody has been doing. Tell me why, and kind of what has driven that the past couple of years for you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting is even when I moved away, I've always, I'm proud to be from Amarillo. I love my family. I love the people that I've met. I love traveling places and people having a connection to Amarillo. And when I was young, I went to a Third Eye Blind concert, and that was a big deal for me in Amarillo. And then I went to Snoop Dogg, and my motivation, I always reflect on the feeling I had at the Civic Center at Third Eye Blind in 6th grade and in Snoop Dogg when I was 14, because I felt like here was this thing that I hear on the radio, and then here it is, and I felt a part of the community, and then I also felt good, and the music made me feel good, and the musical history here has always been really kind of cool to me, and the people that used to pass through here. Elvis's only live album that came out in Japan is Elvis Amarillo, 1977. So there's that portion of it, and then when I was away, and even the Christmas party was so well enjoyed by my friends, and they were like, "Thank you! Like, this gives us something to do, and it's different, and it's outside of the box." So I've always wanted to give back to this community, and especially like during COVID, I was like, I went into the wrong business. My dad
large gatherings of people.
The grass always grows. But I always wanted to provide like good feeling here and do what I can. And the Christmas party worked for a while. I did it for 10 years and then retired it. But the Globe News Center, and even to back up, I grew up in the arts. I was Neil Hess and Alan Shankles are huge influences in my life. I was in the Nutcracker for 10 years. People made fun of me. My friends made fun of me, and I didn't care. I loved it. It was so cool. And then Alan Shankles. So I've always had an inspiring deal, and I've always loved the Civic Center. So once that building was built, I just always dreamed of doing something there. And once I had a little time free up from Austin and able to kind of see what cost would be And I realized that I could do something. And I had been trying to book things at the Civic Center, and it wasn't that easy. And then one finally stuck. So wanting to promote that feeling or chasing a feeling that I had and hoping that I can give that to someone else. And then when my sister and Andrew told me about Hoodoo, I was like, man, like this is so cool. Like y'all are doing this for your city. It seems like it went well, and then COVID. But during that time, it had always been a dream of mine to do a festival downtown. I grew up going to the block party, and it's kind of like iconic Amarillo. And so talked to Andrew, hey, what if I'm kind of able to use my, network that I have, because booking artists into a new market is pretty difficult if you're in country and you're in Amarillo.
Yeah, you had to convince them that it's legit to start with.
Totally, and that was kind of the deal the first year with getting washed out. Is I needed a big artist that I knew people in Amarillo maybe knew, but I knew they knew that song. And he had clout to where if that went well, then he would report back to Wasserman, his agent, and say, hey, like that market was good. And that's what happened.
Okay.
He had an amazing time. He reported back to the agents, and 2 weeks later, my inbox was full of people saying, hey, like, can we get this artist to Amarillo, or can we get this artist to Amarillo? So that was really cool. But to go back, talking with Andrew, and I knew that we probably could do it. Like if the city would allow, like if the permitting and stuff was right. And then the challenge was, well, who do we book? It's the obvious thing is country, but we wanted to, the murals and the art is kind of funky and different. So we wanted to kind of match that and be like the murals outside of the box.
Right. And I think that's one of the things people have appreciated about Hoodoo is that it doesn't always feel like an Amarillo festival, or at least like the preconceived idea of an Amarillo music festival.
Yeah.
It's not, George Strait closing things out. But like there is a balance in that you can have, some really great electronic, kind of music. But like this year, West Texas Exiles are going to be here. The Texas Gentlemen are going to be here. Pedal Steel Noah. And so it's got that balance between roots and new music, dance party versus what's familiar here in Amarillo.
And I'm really excited about that, because I feel like the previous years, every year is a learning year, but you take ideas that work or things that you can expand on. Like last year, we added that second stage and put local acts on it just to see if people would go over there.
Yeah, it was cool.
Or what people, and then we were like, well, people will go over there.
Yeah, so I learned of some good local acts because of that.
And so with this year, how do we grow? So we have a bit bigger stage over there, and the Texas Gentlemen are going to headline over there. West Texas Exiles will open up for them, and then a local guy, Rye Wolf, who's incredible, and then the Blue Johnnies. So kind of, it's not a complete country stage, but having options and kind of, Euphoria was a multi-genre, though that was electronic and jam and rap, but those models work, and it's really exciting to be working on that here, because the growth feels natural. We're not trying to do anything different. West Texas Exiles, Daniel's from here.
It's been on this podcast.
And the Texas Gentleman is kind of a long play for me to get Ryan Bingham to play Hodgetown Stadium.
Keep working on it.
Yeah. And so because they're his backing band. So I'm excited about that. And then our headliner is an electronic act, but they're singers. And she's absolutely incredible and has a song with Neil Francis and LP who's played. And then Sir Woman, who's a kind of a 7-piece R&B funk band, and then Kaylin. So it's really exciting. And then Chill Sun.
Yeah, local band.
It's fun and hard, but also like the puzzle aspect is what's really exciting, right? Because you're like, you put all this stuff on the wall and you're like, I know I want this. What can I get? What do I want to negotiate? and kind of arranging it. And then what is the best flow where anyone can have a good time or be enjoying themselves. And part of my ethos with Hoodoo talent buying, because it is a different market, is that whatever act needs to be able to, if someone hasn't heard them and they just walked up, that they would enjoy it.
Yeah.
There's nothing harsh or, and kind of keeping that in mind, being like, hey, I know that, because it is hard. I'm used to, not hard, but I'm buying for festivals where you don't really have to worry if the audience knows who it is, and not leaving it as much of the promoter to educate, so thinking about it as like a vibe and a feeling. And also I feel like all of the acts this year, hopefully everyone likes, like there's something for everyone, I guess, is the way that you would say that.
I feel it's like any artist putting on a concert. They know that some people are there that want to hear the hits.
Yeah.
But they also want to play other music, their new music, and introduce new stuff to them. And a promoter's doing the same thing. Like, you want to make the crowd happy, but you also, like you said, you want to educate them. You want to expose them to new art and new artists and new styles. And so it's kind of finding a balance between those things.
Totally.
I want to close this section because Amarillo is such a big part of your story, and because you do work with so many outside artists, those you've brought into Hoodoo, knowing it's still a young event. Amarillo might not have been on their radar before, it started to develop that reputation. What's their perspective? Like, what do you hear from them after they, Kalen Ellis comes back for the third year?
Yeah, this will be
fourth year. Like he enjoys playing here. So what are the kinds of things that you hear from those artists who come here?
Yeah, it has been really exciting to show kind of my friend group and these artists my hometown that I talked about, crazily forever. And I also am able to bring some South by people, and kind of I have a staff and they all come up and have worked. But for example, Washed Out, the very first year, I gave him a ride to the airport the next day, and he was like, I want to come back. I want to play the Globe News Center. This is a great community. And he really, repeated that, which was really cool. And then, like, for example, the next year, Flamingosis, whose original tracks were actually put out by Corbin Carey on Sunset Waves, who's from Amarillo.
Corbin's from Amarillo.
And he took the photograph of his Bright Moments album. So bringing him back was really cool. And he loves Amarillo, and his agent has emailed to come play back. And then Neil Francis, they loved it. I think people are surprised they don't know what to expect. Like when Neil Francis are booked to play a mural festival in Amarillo, and then they're like, this is, really cool. And then last year was really special because I kind of have, LP has been a really good friend. And
LP Jobby?
Yes.
Yeah.
And her partner started a festival called Snowball and Snow Globe and grew it to be very big, and ended up being able to sell it to Viacom and MTV. And it was really kind of exciting for me that he came, and he said him being so positive towards it. And he just said, hey, Will, he's like, we've worked events together. He's like, I haven't seen anything like this. You've got 8-foot tall panels over there. You've got a horse on the wall being lit up. You got tons of local vendors, and you've got a bunch of like different people that I wouldn't think would be in this city.
It's a diverse crowd at Hoodoo, which is fun.
Yeah. And that was really cool. And then LP is just nonstop. I mean, she's trying to come, she's got such a busy schedule, but she's trying to come on her Airstream tour, wants to play at the Cadillac Ranch, the Canyon. And what's
last year she collaborated with Taylor Swift.
Yeah. And they released it a week after.
Yeah.
She released it just a week after. And then also, and I hope some listeners were there and remember this, but at breakfast that morning, I showed LP like Amarillo by morning. I was like, hey, like, you should play this. And she was like, you know what, I should. And she went to her room and she made like a little Amarillo by Morning edit and then played it at the end of her song, which was just so special and like really, really cool and meaningful. And then to have her come out with the track with Taylor Swift like a week after performing in front of my hometown was just so cool because she's the only female electronic artist to have a track with Taylor Swift and be on her Spotify. And, talking with her about that experience is just pretty wild. Like she was unaware, it was going to be released until 2 days kind of before it was.
Wow.
Which was just super crazy. So all positive reviews of Amarillo. I think with the interest in places like Marfa and kind of land art and traveling, Amarillo kind of has a mixing pot of that for people that, like to go see stuff. I always try and drive them around Amarillo and maybe they see a sign and some couple of weird things, but also the people. People are they're like, everyone here is so nice and hospitable and kind. Because a lot of these artists are used to going into big places and it's hustle and bustle. Yeah. And then they come here and it's like, yeah, you're at the hotel across the street. I'll come get you, walk over to the stage. It's been exciting. So it's incredibly rewarding. After the final hour of Hoodoo is all very emotional because it's like, every year it's worked and we've had good weather. And I also have a sense of gratitude that like we accomplished it and that it worked out and people seem to enjoy it. And I hope like that people get to not feel here for a little bit or not feel here, but like escape from escape from the current state of the world. And Amarillo's like, I don't know. I think it's not the only place that it can happen, but me studying festival models and footprints and how things work, it's just like one of the best overall models, site plans, and events. My favorite thing is I've done South by and festivals for 15 years. And Euphoria, we spend all this money and have this party, and 2 days later, we have nothing to show for it. And with Hoodoo, like not only do you throw this party, but you create lasting memories that can be revisited, like that you can identify that wall, or at least for me, like being able to come home and drive around and be like, hey, that was like part of this bigger thing.
That was the 2023 thing. Yeah.
So that's been really cool.
This episode of Amarillo is supported by StoryBridge, an early childhood literacy program. In Potter and Randall counties, less than half of the children entering kindergarten are ready to learn to read. This is an educational deficit. It starts at age 5 and it negatively affects a child's performance all the way through grade 12, if they make it that far. 2 years ago, StoryBridge launched the Dolly Parton Imagination Library program to address this problem. And thanks to generous local donors, more than 8,000 children under 5 are now registered and receive a new age-appropriate book in the mail every month, and it comes at no cost to their families. In fact, StoryBridge just expanded into Armstrong County, and now they're working to expand their program to reach more than 10,000 area children. And you can help. So to give or to get involved, visit storybridgeama.org. That's storybridgeama.org. Okay, I'm back with Will Krause. Will, this is part of the show I call 8 Straight. 8 Straight is sponsored every week by Panhandle Plains Historical Museum and Canyon. It's the largest history museum in Texas, but it's also a revered art museum. It includes the finest Southwestern American art collection between Fort Worth and Santa Fe and the most comprehensive historic Texas art collection in the state. You can see examples of this work and learn more at panhandleplains.org. Okay, first question. When you think of Amarillo and Canyon 10 years from now, you're a relative newcomer back to the city. What do you hope for?
I would hope for continued growth and infrastructure. I've recently visited the Amatech.
Amtech?
Yeah, and was just absolutely blown away.
It does not feel like anything in Amarillo.
Yeah, and it really makes me excited for the community and the people that those people are teaching right now, and what can become, because what I saw there was stuff that I see in big offices in Austin. And
you probably could have used when you were in high school.
Oh,
with
totally.
all the production elements.
I think trades are very important, and I think knowing what you want to do and specializing in it is really exciting. So I'm excited to see what people come out of Amarillo, and I would hope that kind of the infrastructure and expansions go well. And yeah, it just seems like more and more people are figuring out to move to Texas, and then they're like, hey, this is me, I think in 10 years Amarillo is going to be a very well-known and potentially different version of itself.
Okay.
Now with the baseball stadium and the expansions, so that's what I would hope.
Yeah, well, and remote workers who are disaffected with Austin or Dallas or some of that kind of grind.
Look at me.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some of those now. Other than wind, what does this area have too much of?
Bad drivers, tea, and coffee shops.
Okay.
Would be, I think.
All three of those then.
Well, I think those are everywhere. I think it's hard. Because, I mean, you could also say we don't have enough coffee and tea places.
We've got enough to justify a lot of coffee and tea places.
We've got it going on.
Yeah, there's a market for it.
Yeah.
What does this area not have enough of?
Coming from Austin, I think our city parks could be kept up a bit better and more upkeep and social kind of spaces. I see what beautiful green space does for places. So
we fell behind on that.
Yeah.
We've made some steps to catch up. But at this point, it's still a catching up process.
Yes.
And that's making a park nice, you can't make those trees grow overnight. So it's one of those things where you have to realize that the changes we make today are changes that the next generation can enjoy.
Totally.
I'm not real patient, for that sort of thing. So psychologically, it's difficult. What's your favorite local neighborhood?
I'm partial to San Jacinto. My family grew up there. I went to Sam Houston. My dad used to, when I was a kid, briefly owned the Phillips gas station, and my relatives owned Barnaby's Beanery.
Wow, yeah.
And then Route 66 history, my first shows.
Right, at the Nat.
Brought my first bands. I think, and it's I don't know if it. In my time in Amarillo, like that is the constant. Like 6th Street kind of has remained the same, which I think is cool.
Okay. What's your favorite Amarillo area restaurant or food truck?
It was Malcolm's.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think Eat Right is a cool establishment just 'cause supporting local, and it's also a store. So I would say Eat Right.
Eat Right's a good one.
Come back, Malcolm's.
Man, I've heard rumors.
I've heard rumors
too.
True. I hope they're true.
I can't confirm any of them, but maybe there's some optimism. We'll see. What's the most underrated aspect of living in the Panhandle?
Well, for me, like I love the convenience of the Panhandle. I don't think it's underrated, but just the natural beauty is pretty. I'm awestruck sometimes, at the sunsets, but I think people do appreciate that. So as far as underrated aspect, I mean, for me, convenience.
I mean, yeah.
Like it's very...
Despite the bad drivers, you're always pretty close to wherever you need to go.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, other than the Hoodoo Foundation, which is the nonprofit behind the festival, what's your favorite local nonprofit?
Make-A-Wish Foundation. My dad's done the chili cook-off for 40 years, and then outside of that, there used to be one called Keep Amarillo Beautiful, which was ran by the lovely Dusty McGuire, and my father worked with her a lot when I was little. He was the litter critter. They had a whole initiative of teaching kids not to litter, and it worked pretty good. But yeah, Make-A-Wish has always near to me.
Yeah, they've done really good work.
Yeah.
In fact, Andrew's offices are the old Make-A-Wish.
The old
offices.
Make-A-Wish.
Okay, when was the last time you visited the Big Texan?
I ate at the Big Texan with Bobby Lee just a couple months ago, and then we take the muralist.
Do you?
There.
Okay, so that's part of their Amarillo experience?
Totally. Once they figure it out, they're like, we've got to go there.
Does it meet their expectations?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they have
it's everything they want it to be.
I think they have more, I don't know if the calf fries meet the expectation, but they seem to really enjoy it. And even I went through a thing, or not thing, but like I have friends work out there, and you never really know what to think about it, and not being away, and then it's crazy with the internet. I mean, I was living in Alaska, and that'd be the first thing people would say, like, "Oh, the place with the free 72-ounce steak and the cars in the ground."
I always challenge people to go there and listen for foreign accents and see how many different languages you hear spoken.
Yeah,
because it's never just English. Yeah. I mean, there's people from all over the world who stop in on almost any day.
Yeah, it's really baffling, and to me, like, I know they didn't start it, but. Oh, a lot. Shouts to Big Texan for like the food challenge craze. Like it was,
they were way ahead of it.
Yeah, like they've been on it. So I think that's a cool, I like large things that can identify our hometown.
Yeah. Okay. That concludes the 8 straight questions. I like to close by asking my guests to endorse something. So what's one thing you would like listeners to know about or to experience?
Touching back to earlier, the natural beauty of Amarillo, Powder Canyon, Cadillac Ranch, the rich art history kind of really amazes me, from Stephen Shore to Ed Ruska's Standard Station, Georgie O'Keeffe. I think more so than that, like the people, meet some people from Amarillo. You won't be sorry. I don't know. Even in Austin, my friends were all from here. Okay. So it's just so fun to be back here. And what's great is, like, when I bring people up here to work, everyone somehow becomes obsessed with Amarillo. I want DJ Cassandra, she's already come back. Like, it's wild. So there's definitely something in the air. So
there's a vibe. There's a creative vibe that I think draws creative people in.
Totally.
It produces creative people, but it's also a draw.
Totally.
And that's interesting. Like, I can't fully explain it, but
yeah, I think Hayden and I have talked about it too. We've just like, what is it? Is it the flatness mixed with the canyon, mixed with the weirdness? But truly some of the most talented people I know are from here. You got Jim Wilson.
Yeah.
My dad went to school with him. He brought Stephen Bishop. They did a PBS filming back in the day, and now he's coming back, and Jim Wilson is like, he's tuned everyone's piano. It's easier to name some, like, people he hasn't. Yeah. So I just think there's something really, really interesting and unique about Amarillo.
Will Krause, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And that concludes the episode. I want to say thanks to Will for the interview. You can find out more about the Hoodoo Mural Festival at hoodoomural.com. Of course, Brick and Elm is a sponsor of this event. We're hosting the Brick and Elm Food Truck Alley. So I hope that you'll come to that, if nothing else, to eat some good food from food trucks. The art and the music are also a good draw. I'll see you at Hoodoo. Thanks also to Storybridge and Panhandle Plains Historical Museum for supporting the podcast. And thank you for listening. Hey Amarillo exists on a weekly basis because of listeners like you, people like you who listen all the way to the end of this while I'm reading the credits. I really do appreciate it. If that's you, I'd love a review of the show. If you want to give it 5 stars or say some nice words at Apple Podcasts or wherever you might listen to podcasts. Hey Amarillo's executive producers include Patrick Burns, Jason Burr, Katie Leager, Corey Burns, Josh Wood, Wes Reeves, Cindy Graham, and Barbara and Jim Witten. This has been episode 370. My name is Jason Boyette, and I'll see you next week.